Welcome back. Let's continue from where we left. Only way to master nested for loop is to do lots of examples. But whenever you see a 2 or 3 or n dimensional problem, then consider using nested loops. Confused? Let us consider the problem in which we have to print 1 plus sign at line 1, 2 plus signs at line 2, 3 plus signs at line 3, 4 plus signs at line 4, and 5 plus signs at line 5. Output should be exactly like this. This is a two-dimensional problem. Agree or not? Let's say we have horizontal axis x and vertical axis y. At first line, we print plus ones. As we continue printing, we move down as well as we move right. In other words, we are filling or using vertical as well as horizontal spaces. So it's a 2D problem. Now let's see how we can use nested for loops to solve this. We will have one loop to move downwards and another to move right. Rows will be handled by outer loop and columns will be handled by inner loop. So how many rows are there? There are 5 rows. So outer loop should execute 5 times. Let me write the syntax for outer loop. For int I equals to 1, lower bound is 1 and upper bound is 5, because we have to execute outer loop for 5 times. So boolean check should be I less than equals to 5 and the step expression I plus plus. So this is my outer loop. Let's now understand what we are expecting at runtime. There is outer loop. When it executes first time, then I will be 1. And in that case, using inner loop, I want to print plus ones. This plus ones. So I am printing plus sign using inner loop. Then when second time outer loop executes, value of I will be 2 and I will print plus twice. Third time I is 3, I'll print plus 3 times. Fourth time I will be 4, I will print plus 4 times. And finally fifth time I will be 5 and plus will be printed 5 times. Outer loop's execution is fixed. It will execute 5 times only. But inner loop's execution is not fixed. When I equals to 1, inner loop execute 1 time only. When I equals to 2, inner loop execute 2 times. When I equals to 3, inner loop executes 3 times. When I equals to 4, inner loop executes 4 times. And when I equals to 5, inner loop executes 5 times, because plus is printed 5 times. So as per this logic, the number of times inner loop executes is equal to the value of I in the outer loop. So when the value of I in the outer loop is 1, inner loop executes 1 time. When the value of I in outer loop is 2, inner loop executes 2 times, and so on. So upper bound of the inner loop should be equal to the value of I in the outer loop. Let's define the inner loop. For int j equals to 1, j is less than equals to, the upper bound should be equal to the value of I in the outer loop. So it should be I semicolon step expression j plus plus. This is my inner loop. Looks good. Let us write the print statement. System dot out dot println, and within double quotes plus sign semicolon. What do you think? Will it execute? Yes, it will execute, but output may not be as expected. Let's check. When Java runtime first encounters the outer loop, it executes the initialization expression. So let us consider this as outer portion. It creates a variable I. Variable I is initialized to 1. Then Boolean condition is checked. 1 is less than equals to 5, which is true. Control goes inside, it creates a variable j. This is inner side. Variable j is created. It is initialized to 1. The condition is 1 less than equals to 1, which is true. Control goes inside and it prints plus sign onto the console. So let's consider this portion as our console. So it prints plus, and as we had used println, so cursor moves to the next line. Then Java runtime executes the step expression of inner loop. J is incremented by 1, j becomes 2, condition is 2 less than equals to 1, which is false. Control goes out of the inner loop and j becomes inaccessible. Control goes to the step expression of outer loop. I is incremented by 1, I becomes 2, condition is 2 less than equals to 5, which is true. Control goes inside, it creates a variable j, initializes it to 1. Now the condition is 1 less than equals to 2, which is true. Control goes inside, it prints plus, and as we had used println statement, it moves the cursor to the next line. Now this is the problem. If cursor has already moved, then how the next plus will be printed on the same line? It seems inner loop should not move the cursor. So in the inner loop, instead of using println, use print only. But cursor should move to the next line once we are done with inner loop processing. So let us add a blank system.out.println statement outside inner loop after we are finished with inner loop but within outer loop. So over here add system.out.println statement. And this should solve the problem. Let us verify this in Eclipse. This is the same solution which we wrote. Run it and we see the expected output. Whenever you solve such problems, always draw on paper to find out what happens at runtime. This will help you to figure out proper solution to your problem, and if you make any mistakes, then you can rectify it. Here we have nested for loop up to 2 levels, but you can nest it to any number of levels. Working of nested while loop or do while loop is similar to nested for loop, so I am not covering it here. In fact, you can nest for loop within while loop, or while loop within for loop, or do while loop within while loop, and so on. Let's move to the last topic in this lecture, which is labeled statements. Label is the identifier for these statements. Following statements can be labeled in Java: if and switch statements, while, do while and for loops, expressions, assignments, a code block defined using curly brackets, return statements, try block, and throws statement. We have already covered these topics. Rest will be covered in future lectures. Names of the labels follow the same rule as the names of identifiers in Java. For example, you cannot use Java keywords as label names. Let us see a very simple example on how we can label a statement in Java. You need to type a label name followed by colon just before the statements which you want to label. I have labeled if statement, switch case block, while loop, do while loop, for loops, expression, and assignments. Labeled statements is the class name. So class name and method names are valid labels but make no sense. You can't label a variable declaration. Let me uncomment this code. Some compilation error is shown. Let me undo the changes, save it. Though there are warnings as we have created several labels but not used them in our program. But this is a valid class. Run it to verify and we see some output. In this lecture, we have covered what are labeled statements and how to define these. Real use of labeled statements will be covered in branching statements lecture. With this, we have come to an end. Hope you enjoy my lectures. Take care and happy learning.